Good evening to those who have joined us live, and thank you for joining us for the June 2023 edition of the Taylor Tuesday webinar series. Tonight's subject is Improving Your Practice's Diabetic Shoe Outcomes. I am Dr. Jeff Lehrman. I am a founding shareholder of Taylor Medical and happy to get to moderate this webinar. I'm going to introduce our speakers in a moment, that being Nick Turner and Scott Bolasky from SureFit. Before we get into tonight's content, a reminder that Taylor offers these webinars to the podiatric community, not just podiatric community, really, our entire community of colleagues. And these webinars are always recorded and archived on the Taylor Medical website. There are dozens of these now. We've been doing these for years. There are lots of webinars there. It's a very good chance if you have a question about a certain service that you want to provide or have a question about or how you might do better in your practice. If you click on the Taylor Medical list of webinars, you may very well find that subject covered in a webinar on the Taylor Medical website. And if you want to find a recording of tonight's webinar, the slides from tonight's webinar, and any previous recordings and previous slides, visit taylormedical.com. And in the top right, almost all the way in the top right corner, you see the word webinars, and there you can access all of our on-demand, previously broadcast and now recorded, available on-demand webinars. If you don't know what Taylor Medical is, it is a group purchasing organization that allows those who are participating to purchase at normally a significantly discounted rate. Oftentimes when we talk about having a more efficient practice, having a more productive, successful practice, we talk about doing more, making more, generating more, and that's fair. However, we could look at it the other way too. And another way to have a more efficient, successful practice, perhaps a smarter way to have a more efficient, successful practice, is to spend less. And that's what Taylor Medical helps us with, including the diabetic shoes that you are about to hear about, and just about anything else you could imagine possibly needing in your office, from medical supplies, supplies for patients, like we're going to talk about tonight, all the way to chairs and printers and ink cartridges and just about anything that you might need in your office. And if you're questioning, is this for me? Really? How much are those savings? How much of a difference? Some people say, I'm kind of in a pattern. I like who I purchase from. Is it really going to be that much of a difference to switch? Taylor is willing to do that work for you. If you email the email that you see in the top right of this slide, admin@taylormedical.com, they will do a cost analysis for you. You can fill it out yourself, or you could just send in the last slip that came out of the box, right? Every time we get the big box of supplies, there's a slip in there with all the stuff that we bought and how much it all cost. And the staff at Taylor Medical will cross-reference that for you and do the analysis for you. It's a pain, right, to have to sit down and figure out how much everything costs. Taylor will do it for you, and then you'll get the exact answer on just how much savings you will enjoy by participating with Taylor Medical. Getting to tonight's formal program, we welcome in Nick Turner and Scott Bolasky. Nick is the Director of Sales for SureFit Lab, which is a Hanger subsidiary. Most recently, Nick served as Vice President for Business Development for Pacesetter Health, which is a private equity-backed podiatry consolidator. Prior to that, Nick was the co-founder and managing director of DocShop Pro, which is a podiatric e-commerce marketplace distributor. Nick lives in St. Louis with his wife and 2 children and has been in the podiatric community for over a decade. Scott Bolasky is the senior sales manager for SureFit Lab, a Hanger subsidiary. Scott has been with SureFit for over a decade, starting as the area sales representative for the Northeast Mid-Atlantic area, and has for the past 5 years been managing the sales team. Scott lives in the Philadelphia area with his wife and 2 children as well. And if you've been to a podiatry show, if you've been around, you know these guys, you've seen them. They are where we are. They live podiatry. They know podiatry. They speak our language. They support our conferences. They support our continuing education. They support our events. They do stuff like this to help us. So these are 2 real partners in the podiatry world who have helped hundreds, without exaggeration, of us and our colleagues. We're happy to have them here to help us, and we'll welcome into Scott to start tonight's presentation. And one more thing, we want Q&A. We are leaving time for Q&A. Please don't be bashful with your questions. If you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the word chat. There's 2 little speech bubbles there with the word chat, C-H-A-T. And please type your questions in. We're leaving time at the end for questions. There is no such thing as a silly question. Scott and Nick and I were actually discussing this before we pushed the button to go live. They said one of the reasons we want to do this is to make sure we answer the questions from the community. So please put your questions in. We're leaving time. You don't have to wait until the end. As a matter of fact, if you put them in as we go, it will help us to triage them and organize them and help us get to as many as we possibly can. And with that, we welcome in Scott to start tonight's presentation.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lehrman. We appreciate you having us on tonight. So I'll just get started here with kind of what we're going to cover. Everybody's time is very valuable. So I've got this presentation down to about 20 minutes. And what we'll do is we'll quickly cover who we are, our Medicare document management service, shoe selection tips, and fitting support. All right, so we'll start with some background about SureFit's vision. So partnership is really what we believe in. We understand that your priority is patient care. So it's our mission to continually expand our business to give you back time to spend with your patients. We will continue to provide you with exceptional service and explore new ways to save you money on material costs, but we've made it an objective to deliver more than just products for you. We know that shoes can be difficult. Staffing challenges made it harder than ever. However, we've built podiatry-focused solutions that simplify providing diabetic shoes. So for those who are not aware, SureFit is part of the Hanger family of companies. Hanger owns and operates 895 orthotics and prosthetics clinics throughout the U.S. SureFit services these facilities along with over 1,000 podiatry offices to streamline the diabetic shoe process. I'm going to give you some background here on the Medicare Diabetic Shoe Program. CMS has very specific documentation that's necessary prior to dispensing diabetic footwear. The Therapeutic Shoe Bill was passed back in 1993 as an act of Congress, and the bill was designed to help prevent lower limb ulcers, amputation, and other complications from patients for patients with diabetes. And according to Podiatry Management's 2023 annual survey, only about 48% of podiatrists dispense therapeutic shoes. Medicare documentation requirements and audits have significantly reduced the number of providers dispensing therapeutic footwear. Comprehensive foot care programs can reduce the diabetic foot amputations between 45 and 85%, according to the CDC. Yet less than 20% of those who qualify for diabetic shoes are actually receiving them. The leading cause of non-traumatic lower limb amputations in the United States is diabetes. So a study compared over 26,000 patients who received shoes and inserts, and the results showed a 12% reduction in ulcers and an 18% reduction in amputations. All right, so what is a diabetic shoe? So I'm going to read the PDAC description for what a diabetic shoe is. It's listed as an A5500 for diabetics only, fitting, including follow-up, custom preparation, and supply of off-the-shelf depth inlay shoes manufactured to accommodate multi-density inserts per shoe. There's 4 main criteria for a diabetic shoe. It must provide a minimum of 3/16-inch additional depth. It's made of a leather or other suitable material, has a closure system, and it's available in full and half sizes with a minimum of 3 widths. All of the shoes in the SureFit catalog are PDAC approved. So now we'll go to what is a diabetic insert. So there's 3 types of inserts. The A5512s are a prefabricated multi-density insert. These need to be heat molded to a patient's foot. The A5513s and A5514s are custom molded inserts and custom fabricated. L5000s are partial foot toe fillers. The difference between an A5513 and an A5514 are simply how the inserts are manufactured. The 5514 is the primary method used by manufacturers utilizing the digital CAD/CAM technology. And this method can utilize foot scans submitted digitally or by receiving a foam impression or cast and scanning that to load into the CAD/CAM system. The reimbursement for a 5513 and a 5514 are the same, and SureFit uses the 5514 method for milling the inserts. However, if there's a reason for us to use the 5513 method, it would be indicated on the invoice. All SureFit inserts meet the Medicare requirements as outlined on this slide. Okay, so now we know what the shoes and the inserts are. So what does Medicare cover? It's going to cover 1 pair of shoes per calendar year and 3 pairs of inserts.
So, Scott, just to take a step back here, this is Nick, and Dr. Lerman certainly would love your guidance if you hear or see otherwise, but a common question I know we'll get on the 1 calendar year guidance is that if you fit and dispense a patient in December, come January, technically it's a new calendar year. Are you good to go ahead and see that patient again? I know the feedback we typically tell people is to really try to stick closer to 12 months. Typically that's better from an audit standpoint, even though this technically reads calendar year, but also in theory, you want it to last for as long as the patient needs it. So if they're going to use it for 12 months, you don't want them to necessarily kind of chew those shoes up and then have to wait for a gap period before they can get shoes again. But Dr. Lerman, I was curious your feedback or if you've gotten that question.
Yes, I've gotten that question. And Nick, you make an excellent point. So letter of the law, yeah, it says 1 calendar year. However, medical necessity is an umbrella requirement that governs all of this. So if somebody gets a pair of shoes and 3 pair of inserts on December 20, do they need another pair of shoes and 3 pair of inserts on January 10? Is it medically necessary, or was it just time? And because the calendar changed. So Nick's right. It does say 1 calendar year. However, just like Nick said, do not ignore the umbrella of medical necessity that even is above the calendar year thing. It has to be medically necessary. And it's probably not, I gave an extreme as an example, it's likely not medically necessary 15 days later.
Perfect. Thank you for the feedback. And Scott, we'll send it back to you now.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So I'll walk you through the documentation requirements, and we'll just start with some basic definitions starting with the certifying physician. So the certifying physician provides the medical care for and manages the beneficiary's systematic diabetic condition. The certifying physician must be an DO or an MD. Certifying physician may not furnish shoes unless he or she is in a defined rural area or health professional shortage area. The certifying physician cannot be a podiatrist. The prescribing physician is the person who writes the order for the therapeutic shoes, modifications, and inserts. This may be a podiatrist, an MD or DO, a physician's assistant, a nurse practitioner, or a clinical nurse specialist. They must be knowledgeable in diabetic shoes and inserts, and the prescribing physician can be the supplier. The supplier is the actual entity that furnishes the shoe modification and or insert and bills Medicare for it. The supplier may be a podiatrist or other qualified individual. The prescribing physician may be the supplier. The certifying physician may be the supplier only if he or she is practicing in a defined rural or a defined healthcare professional shortage area.
Yeah, and one thing I'd throw in here is, especially in rural areas, we've seen definitely an uptick in pharmacies being the supplier. Another thing we've seen an increase in is staff getting certified as a certified therapeutic shoe fitter, which is part of the ABC, which is an O&P accrediting body. We've seen staff getting accredited under that to do certified shoe fitting. So while podiatrists over the last couple of years had dropped off doing shoes, that's kind of where we've seen some of the slack picked up, more so in rural areas. But as Scott said, and as the literature shows, there's still a big lack of suppliers, and patients really need these shoes. And, you know, these are medical devices. These medical devices are making a big difference in reducing amputations and reducing ulcers. So, you know, a lot of who we've been talking to the last year or so, you know, if you saw the PM News survey, it's up 4% in terms of podiatrists doing shoes. There's a lot of people who stopped during COVID because of staffing challenges. We're seeing a lot of people bring them back. And what I would just throw out there is, one, your patients, if you're seeing diabetic patients, many of them need this. But two, it's also a good way to keep patients in your clinic, because if you're not dispensing shoes and you're sending them out, if they're getting sent to an O&P clinic that has a 3-month backup, likely they're going to another podiatrist who does do shoes, and there's a good chance you're not getting that patient back for future and other services. So that's just one call out I'd have there.
Great. Thanks, Nick. All right. So the criteria for the Medicare coverage. So for an item to be covered by Medicare, a written, signed, and dated order must be on file with the following criteria. The patient has diabetes mellitus, and secondary factor, the patient must have one or more of the following conditions. That would be a previous amputation of the foot or part of either foot, a history of previous foot ulceration, a history of pre-ulcerative calluses of either foot, peripheral neuropathy with evidence of callus formation, foot deformity, and or poor circulation. The certifying physician who is managing the patient's systematic diabetes has certified that indications 1 and 2 are met, and that he or she is treating the patient under a comprehensive plan of care for his or her diabetes, and that the patient needs diabetic shoes.
And Scott, if I can add something there, another thing Nick mentioned, questions that I've received, like, don't make this harder than what it is, right? It says previous amputation, and that's all it says. It does not qualify the level of the amputation. It doesn't say how much needs to be amputated. So we have enough restrictions in what we do that are overbearing and more difficult. If one seems like, wow, that's pretty broad, fine, take it. Don't make it worse. And again, like Scott has shared this perfectly. This is precisely what it says. No more, no less. Previous amputation of the foot or part of the foot. So if they've part of their foot cut off, that's it. The box is checked. And I make this point because I've been asked, well, is there a certain level that it has to be? No, it doesn't say that. Or, you know, you get in the chat room or some other nonsense, like, I heard that it has to be an amputation proximal to the whatever. There's no reference for that. I don't know where that craziness comes from. The same could be said for pre-ulcerative calluses, right? We all went to school and know why a callus develops. And I've gotten questions like, well, does it have to be a certain severity, or does there have to be intradermal hematoma? Or no, it has to be exactly what it says, which is a pre-ulcerative callus. So I'm sure you gentlemen have encountered those questions as well, and just wanted to make the point that this is shared precisely and perfectly, and no need to make it any different than what it is.
Completely agree. And we get those questions frequently as well. So yeah, definitely keep chiming in, Dr. Lerman, because I'm sure we hear a lot of the same stuff.
Yep. Thank you for that. Okay, so some of the important dates that the paperwork must adhere to. Your statement of certifying physician must be signed and dated within 3 months prior to dispensing the footwear. The prescription must be signed and dated within 6 months prior to dispensing the footwear. And the physician treating the diabetes must conduct a clinical foot assessment within 6 months and document the foot conditions. Clinical notes should be reflected on the SCP. We suggest this being the first question that you ask when you're identifying a patient for diabetic shoes. If they haven't seen their MD or DO within 6 months, they will need to have that done prior to starting the shoe ordering process.
And Scott, just to pause you there, the other question I would ask your patient, to make this more realistic, is not just who your MD or DO is, but who is managing your diabetes. That might be another specialist, nephrologist, or someone else. So asking who is managing their diabetes is as important as when's the last time you've seen them. Because if it's somebody other than their MD or their primary care doctor, even though they've seen them 3 months ago, if that's not the physician managing the diabetes, then there's a good chance the note won't be able to support the need for shoes and inserts.
Yep. And the supplier will have the clinical notes on file or have access to those notes as well. So before we jump into our solutions for this, I wanted to quickly review what our product offering is. So if you think of SureFit as your one-stop shop, we now carry Anodyne, Dr. Comfort, Apex, Brooks, New Balance, Apis, ProPay, and our own SureFit line of shoes. So the benefit to your practice is that all of our customer support, billing, manufacturing lab, and warehouse are located just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, in our new warehouse facility. And that means you can give your patients access to all the shoes that they know and love while dealing with only one vendor, one invoice, and one US-based customer support team. With this variety of brands, you should be able to find an option for nearly every patient. Now let's talk a little bit about the MDM program. So today I'll give you a high-level overview of its capabilities. And following this presentation, obviously I'll share my contact information, and we'd be more than happy to set up individual demonstrations over Zoom. We can focus on your specific practice and needs at that time. And the MDM program was built to reduce the amount of time that your staff spends on collecting documents while ensuring that you're meeting the Medicare requirements in the event of an audit. So our team will manage the MD-DO outreach and will review all the paperwork for accuracy. In addition to that, we will review the MD-DO notes for reference of diabetic care. If this is not present, we reach out directly to their office and document this in the order history. So this is an optional service we provide. If you choose to utilize the service, there's a $5.49 per order fee. And this is only billed if we are successful in obtaining all the documentations and ship you the shoes and inserts. The system will allow you to streamline the paperwork, offload the PCP follow-up, keep track of deadlines and due dates that we went over, eliminate orders for patients with incomplete paperwork, and increase your first-time claims. This will also provide you the ability to centralize your data. So this is an example of what our MDM dashboard looks like. And this is going to allow you to see all of your patient orders that are either in progress, which is the top section here, and indicate what documents that we have received. You can also see your completed orders listed in the bottom section. You can click on the order number for a deeper dive into the order history. The dashboard provides you with a quick reference of the status of an order without needing to pick up the phone and call for an update. So this is the view once you click on the specific order number. When we have received all the documentation, we will extract the required dates and populate them on the right side along with the Medicare requirements. So if you can see right here, we're going to pull out the DPM evaluation date and give you what's needed here so that it stays within the Medicare guideline. Same for the certifying physician statement, the relevant signature date, and then either the practitioner evaluation date of when did they last see their MD or DO managing the diabetes. So this will, when we send out a shoe, we are going to ensure that everything fits within these dates, but then you will also have these dates available when you go to fit the patient in the event that they can't get back in to the office, or you have a canceled appointment and you're worried about the documentation expiring. You don't have to look through all the paperwork yourself. You'll be able to take a look at those dates right here. So this should really save your staff some time in searching through those notes. If any of the dates fall outside of the Medicare requirements, we will notify you through the portal. We'll also provide you with tracking information once the shoes and inserts are shipped, and those will be listed up in here. Okay. So there are a lot of things that your office may need to ensure an accurate and timely payment for diabetic shoes. Our system has it all documented to minimize the likelihood of missteps or missed documents. If something is missing, our system is going to flag it and track it. Our MDM support team will communicate with you via the portal to ensure there is ongoing two-way dialogue. Your practice name will appear on the notes that are being sent through the portal. The system will create your diabetic note based on the particular information that you provide for that patient. This will allow you to electronically sign the documents prior to starting the automated fax process. Now, in addition to our MDM program, another service we provide is our shoe selection guide and our fitting support system. A common challenge that we hear is that patients may want shoes that are not appropriate for their condition. It's important that the fitter dictates the shoes the patients are selecting from. Remember that this is a medical device and it will only be effective if it's for the correct condition. To facilitate this, we provide you with fitting guides that make it easy for you to show your patient which options are the best fit for them. And we've created 3 categories and can provide you with further detailed information by one of our certified podorthists.
Another thing, Scott, if you want to go back one slide there, I know Dr. Kraus in his practice used to do this. We'll help you set up, if you want to do a pared down shoe selection guide. So you decide, hey, having patients sit there with either the selection guide or the catalog, thumbing through, the catalog, thinking like it's, they're at Sears shopping for shoes. If that's what you're trying to avoid, we can help you create a, top 10 men's, top 10 women's one pager. And what we've seen offices do, and I know Dr. Kraus's office used to do this, was laminate them and give it to patients. Have a men's selection guide and a women's that was laminated with a dry erase marker where, essentially they had 6 options in each category. The staff would show them the category that's relevant to them, ask them to circle the top 2 shoes that they wanted and label them 1 and 2. That way, if for whatever reason their top selection's out of stock, or there's an issue, that they already have the backup ready to go and you're not having to call the patient back in. But more importantly, because this is going to be typically your staff's going to be seeing the patient doing this, it helps free up the exam rooms and keep them moving, as opposed to sitting there and, looking at 10 different colors of an athletic shoe, which we have those 10 colors if you want to offer the full catalog. But what we've seen a lot of practices move towards, especially the last few years with staffing challenges and the other challenges that practices are facing, is they want this process simple, fast, and repeatable. And we have resources to allow you to do that and to assist you with that. So while we have these pre-printed guides, we can do a lot of customizable stuff with your practice logo on it, or simplified down if you want to avoid, being perceived as a shoe store, and you really want to make a more narrow selection.
Yep. Thanks, Nick. All right, so shoes come on a variety of lasts, which vary between shoe brands. This can make sizing a little bit more tricky than just using one brand. The upside to this is the variety of brands we will offer, with additional sizes and widths to accommodate almost all of your patient needs. We can help your staff ensure proper ordering by using two easy options. First one is we can train you on the shoe sizing and fitting and provide you with brand devices specific to our catalog. Number two, we'll provide you with the measuring tools to make 4 simple measurements, and our team of 4 clinical certified podorthists will make the shoe sizing selections for you at no additional cost. Utilizing this service can help reduce returns and provide you with a money-back guarantee on sizing exchanges. This is a way to lean on our experts for proper sizing of shoe brands that your staff may not be familiar with. Additionally, we do work with the structure scanners and iPads for custom diabetic inserts. Our team can train you on your existing device or assist you with acquiring a structure scanner. You can place orders online through a scanner, foam impressions with an order form, or utilizing our MDM ordering. We'll provide you with catalogs, measuring devices, and shipping labels at no cost. We also have shoe display options for those that are interested.
And then last but not least, certainly we have TCP member special pricing. So if you are a Taylor Medical member, you can either get with us directly or get with Ashley or Brooke or Carlo with the Taylor Medical team, and we will make sure that you get your member preferred pricing as well.
We're going to transition to our Q&A session. Before we do that, thank you, Scott and Nick. Thank you. You took a process that some feel is difficult and intimidating, and I think made it really straightforward and easy to digest in the way it was presented. And clearly, you're doing that daily for your customers, which is really appreciated. I'll read the first couple questions here. And to those who are with us, we do have time for more. If anybody wants to put in more questions. The first question I have for you guys is, practices are experiencing staff turnover, I think more than many of us were 10 years ago. And if a practice gets up and running and they're cooking and they're efficient, and then all of a sudden the person who's captaining that leaves, are you available to reach back out to and help us repeat that setup process?
So I'll jump in on that, and then Scott certainly follow up. But short answer, yes, we're absolutely available to train, retrain, train again. One call out I'd say I saw personally with managing practices in my past history was the biggest challenge was if you had one person who was doing all the paperwork themselves and that person left, trying to pick up the pieces and figure out their system, which in many cases was a very confusing drawer, a filing cabinet that did not seem to make sense, or worst of all, there was no system and you discover that they weren't really checking all the boxes, dotting all the I's and crossing the T's. That's everybody's worst nightmare. That was our worst nightmare, managing the practices. So, we took our practices and required them to use the MDM system. And the reason for that was not only did it offload a lot of the PCP outreach, which took the work off our staff, but if we had staff turnover, then all of our documents, all of our history was organized in that dashboard and in that HIPAA compliant system. And we were able to have SureFit come in right away, retrain our new staff member how to use the MDM system, but nothing was lost in the transition from a paperwork standpoint. And we had a lot more security knowing that all the boxes were checked, because inevitably you're going to get audited. There's a good likelihood you're going to get an audit at some point. So it's less about being scared of when the audit hits, but being confident that you have all of your ducks in a row. So we felt really good about having a system that had everything tracked. We had a second set of professional eyes looking, that SureFit provides to look over the notes to make sure that the primary doctor who passed on the notes actually documented that they're managing the diabetes, and not just that the patient came in for an annual wellness check 4 months ago and nothing else noted. So that's where I think with staff turnover, having a system like this makes the process much more rinse, wash, and repeat. But then we will also continue to retrain your staff, not only on the system, but on shoe sizing. And I know, if you have staff turnover, and we've all seen this in clinics, the first person knows how to measure really well, they leave. The second person sort of knows how to measure, they train somebody else, they leave. It's like a game of telephone. By the time the fifth person's measuring, you're sitting there going, why are we returning one out of every 2 shoes? That's what we're here for. So yeah, we can come out on site, we can digitally train. But I think the combination of retrains, which we're happy to do, and if you're doing the paperwork yourself using a system like MDM, just gives you the peace of mind that you don't have all your eggs in one basket in case that, linchpin person leaves or retires.
Yep. Just add on that, I would say that there's a lot of detail that's provided in the document management system, so you can always see where it's at in the process and what's been received. So this works really nicely when a patient will call up and say, hey, where are my shoes at? It's been 2 weeks. They can go in and see the detail. Oh, okay. Your doctor, MD, sent it back, but they missed a date, or the notes didn't reference their diabetic care. You can just quickly pull up the portal and do that communication with the patient. So.
Super. That's awesome. And so nice to know that's there. I'm going back in these slides for a reason, because we're going to use them to answer the next couple questions that have come in here. So the next question is, the patient, Scott, you provided the list of criteria, right? And that's where we stopped and said, don't make it more than what it is. These are the words that are chosen. They're chosen for a reason. Don't make it any more or any less. And in reference to that list, let's look at 2C to answer this question. I suggest we draw our attention to that one. The question is, today, the patient qualifies with neuropathy and a callus. We give them the shoes and the inserts. A year goes by, the inserts were so great, and the patient used them and was compliant, that now they don't have a callus anymore. And the question is, are we still okay to dispense using these qualifying criteria?
I'm going to ask you, Jeff, what do you think in your professional opinion?
Yes. And it's not an opinion. Like, we're looking at the rules, and this is a really good example. And thank you to the doctor who asked that question, because it's a really good example of what we meant by don't make it more than what it is. Oftentimes when in the coding world, and we say there's no room for interpretation, these are the rules, the words matter. This is a good example of that. It says the patient has a history of a pre-ulcerative callus. It doesn't say when. It doesn't say if it was 1 year ago or 5 years ago or 7 years ago. So using their words, using their criteria, the patient that the doctor described has a history of a pre-ulcerative callus. So that is definitively yes. And that's not opinion. That's not what any of us think. That's not SureFit direction. That's just the rules from Medicare. All right, this one's more company specific for SureFit. How does the company handle returns? There's actually, this person typed in 2 questions. Let's do that one first. It happens to all of us. They don't like it, doesn't feel right, whatever their problem is. What's the situation with returns?
Yep. So we have a standard 90-day return policy on that. We understand that, there's certain circumstances sometimes where a patient can't come in or, get the shoes in time. What we do ask is just on kind of the front end is an education to the patient that, this is a medical device and there's certain time frames that we need to stay within so that Medicare will do the reimbursement. So simple answer is 90 days is the standard return period, with exceptions that can be made for specific instances.
And I'll take it a step further. I mean, like a lot of companies, we used to have probably a much wider grace period. I think it used to be 6 months. I think during COVID and some of the challenges we faced with people sometimes abusing those policies, we tightened our window. As Scott said, our policy is a 90-day return window. If the product's in good condition, in the original box, and you have one where the patient just didn't show up, if you call us, we're going to take care of you and we're going to take it back. But we have the policy in place so that we don't get kind of abused with it. And I think a lot of people ran into some of those challenges during COVID, and it got put under a microscope as everybody got squeezed during that period of time.
So I think that kind of addresses this one, but let's do it anyway, just to see if you have anything to add. The next question is, what if the patient takes too long to pick up the shoes? We've all had that too. Call them and call them and call them, and it's 10 months later and they're still sitting on the shelf. Does the company provide any relief in a situation like that?
Yeah, I think same situation. I mean, in theory, I would say our policy would tell you it's outside the window. If you call and speak, I believe we have the best customer service team in the business. They're all based out of Georgia, Florida. They're U.S. based. We have a couple team members in Chicago as well, and one in Nebraska. We're going to do right by you as long as you do right by us, and as long as you don't, take advantage. But yeah, Scott, any return fees on shoes?
No, not on shoes.
Returned?
Not on shoes. We don't return. We don't have a restocking fee or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's so nice about working with these guys and Taylor Medical, and Scott and Nick are faces you recognize. This is not some big giant company hiding behind a website. They're giving you their phone number on the slide here. So, these kinds of questions like, will you help us out if they don't pick it up? And what about a return fee? Like, you heard it straight from them. They're reasonable. They get it. They know our world. And they're going to take care of us. Okay. So, all right. I shouldn't have advanced those slides so quickly. We went back with the list of qualifying criteria, and one of them says foot deformity. So the question is, what qualifies as foot deformity? Do you guys want to go, or do you want me to? Because I kind of want to.
Take it. I love having an expert.
Yep.
We're used to answering them, but with you on, why would we waste our breath?
I can't resist. I should shut up, but I can't resist. So this, again, is the lesson of don't, and not suggesting that you did, doctor, but it's the lesson of don't make it more than what it is. Too often, they use their words against us. In this situation, sometimes the way it's worded is frustrating and limiting to us. Sometimes the way it's worded allows us more flexibility. And that's done for a reason, right? This is rarely an accident when it's worded the way that it is. So if we look at 2E, it says foot. The question is, what qualifies as foot deformity? They provide no additional restrictions or definitions or qualifications or severity guidelines related to their words, foot deformity. So if the doctor examines the patient and identifies and documents a foot deformity, then that patient has a foot deformity. I do a lot of shoes for patients with contracted toes because the toe is dorsally contracted at the MPJ. It's a prominent proximal phalangeal head dorsally. Those ulcerate, and that's a deformity. That is not normal anatomy, right? It's deformed. It's a crooked toe with a PIPJ sticking up in the air where the head of the proximal phalanx can rub on something. So any foot deformity, I suggest documenting it very clearly, something along the lines of, this patient has a foot deformity. I always like to say, give them what they're looking for, in the form of a rigidly contracted right second toe with the proximal phalangeal head, right? All the fancy words. But there is no additional qualification. So the answer to your question is any foot deformity without any restriction or criteria or qualification beyond what's here. Now, of course, goes without saying, it has to be there. What we document, of course, has to be accurate and present. And we get the idea, right? This is not for every single person that walks through the door. We should be judicious in our use of this. Looking at this list of A through F, it's a lot of our diabetics, certainly most of our diabetics. And it should be something that, a good way to think of it is if the medical director, the doctor, the MD from Medicare shows up at this patient's house or looks through the pictures in our chart and says, show me that foot deformity. If they saw it, they should think, oh, okay, I get it. That's a crooked toe or a talar bunion or, on and on and on. Any of those forms of deformity. Okay, the next question here, I'm not sure if you guys can help with this, and I'm not sure I understand the question. It deals with custom orthotics. And I think what this person is referring to is the traditional, rigid, functional, custom orthotic. I think, doctor, if I'm wrong, type in and correct me, not the diabetic shoe insert that Scott described earlier in the program. This is about a custom, rigid, functional orthotic. Any guidance on that from you guys?
I would say our lab specializes in the diabetic insert specifically. We do bilam, trilam. I'm forgetting, obviously, L5000s, partial toe fillers, toe fill combos. Scott, what is I guess we have cork as well.
Yeah,
but as far as functional orthotics, that's not currently part of our total offering at the moment.
Next question. What are the shipping fees on the shoes?
Want to take that one, Nick?
We charge standard FedEx. So, initially, we will charge you for the freight to you. If there's any exchange or return needed, if you're doing the CPED fit, that's all at our cost. Obviously, if you're sending in a foam box, we'll pre-provide you with labels, so freight's included on that as well. So the only fee would be the shoe and insert being shipped to you, which we're typically always going to try to ship them together because that makes everybody's life easier. The only time we might have an exception to that is if a shoe's out of stock and has to be shipped direct from Dr. Comfort. They might come in separate boxes, but they'll still be labeled.
So here's a very real scenario that somebody presents dealing with the certifying letter. The official language from CMS is the statement of the certifying physician for therapeutic shoes. This is the one that has to be completed by the MD or DO who's treating the diabetes. And the question is, getting the letters okay. I got that. However, what if their notes don't match what they checked as the qualifying diagnosis? So we need them in that certifying statement to certify that the patient needs the shoes. The question is, what do we do? And Scott and Nick, if you guys have experience with this and maybe any tricks to help make this more efficient, if their notes don't match what they checked as the qualifying diagnosis.
Well, so I guess what I would say is we can look into that specific question a little bit more with our Medicare specialist. But the way that I would interpret that would be that we're referencing the diabetic care in the note, and at that point it would be patient specific, right? So if we would really just kind of need to look at the specific patient and then provide you feedback from there.
So two things I know we do. So our team is going to look it over. They're going to catch that. They're going to then fax back on a cover sheet specifically what's missed and why they need it. So ideally that the primary or the referring physician, certifying physician, then will send it back. I know that I think this was recently in PM News, correct me if I'm wrong, though, you're able to spell it out to a degree and get them to sign off on it. But it does get specific. I saw Dr. Lerman, your head was shaking a couple times. So what's your interpretation there when you run into that challenge?
You can certainly help them, right? You can certainly help that MD or DO who is completing the form to, I feel comfortable saying, guiding them to the qualifying condition and helping to make sure they check the right one. And that just might be communication with that doctor. And you said you're not having trouble getting it to the person who typed in it. So that's good. And maybe the fact that they're willing to do it, because sometimes we have a hard time getting the doctors to sign the paperwork. But you said you're not. So maybe a little bit of encouragement or guidance from you to ensure they're checking the proper condition.
Yeah, and that's, again, our team's going to reach out on behalf of your office to help explain those. So we could certainly get some more concrete examples after the call. The other thing, though, I'd encourage, and I hear this from the hanger clinics a lot who run into these same challenges, is sometimes if they're engaged enough to be doing the certifying letter, sometimes doing like an in-service, going into that doctor's office and maybe doing a lunch and learn with them is a really good opportunity to both educate them on what you need for this, but more importantly, educate them on all the other services you provide and try to figure out how do you get more referrals coming to your office from that provider's office. So I know when the hanger clinics run into this challenge, they, instead of looking at it kind of glass half empty, they look at it glass half full as, hey, we'd love to come in and do a lunch and learn it and, get on the same page with how we can best serve your patients. And they love it because it gives them an excuse to get in there and create more of a referral relationship with that office and try to get other services from them that, maybe previously they weren't getting as far as referrals go.
The next question is unrelated to our content, so I'll take it. It's back to the custom functional orthotic question. No, Medicare does not cover under any circumstance the typical freestanding podiatric custom functional rigid orthotic, the type of orthotic that podiatrists most podiatrists are doing. Medicare will cover orthotics only. And orthotic is a big umbrella term. I'm using it the way most podiatrists use the word orthotic, the rigid, functional, custom orthotic, only if that orthotic is in a shoe which is attached to a leg brace. So that's a very different deal than what most of us are doing. Leg brace that comes up circular, right, with Velcro straps. And that's very different than what most podiatrists are doing. Next question here. I'm going to change the wording a little. I think what they're getting at is what's the relationship with SureFit and Taylor Medical? I think I'm changing the words a bit. I'm trying to refine them a little. I think what they're asking is like, is there benefit to purchasing SureFit through Taylor Medical? And if so, give us an idea of what that is.
Yes, so we offer Taylor Medical members exclusive discounts that aren't available anywhere else. And we were one of the original partner vendors with Taylor Medical dating back to day one. So I know, Dr. Lerman, I think you mentioned a founding shareholder. We were a founding partner company with Dr. Krause and Dr. DeSantis and the whole team. So we've been obviously in podiatry a long time. We were originally founded by a podiatrist ourselves before selling to Hanger. And we try to provide as much benefit, both in terms of discount, but also as part of the Taylor member rebate as we can. So there is a financial benefit and similar to what Dr. Lerman talked about at the beginning of the call with cost analysis. If you opt to do a cost analysis with Taylor Medical, many of the products we do, shoes and inserts, but also DME and bracing, we're working hand in hand with Ashley, Brooke, and Carla and the team over at Taylor Medical to make sure that we are providing the best prices to help you cut costs at your practice without sacrificing quality and service.
Super. Well, we're at our time here, so we actually did get to every question, and that allows us to finish right on time. Scott and Nick, thank you. Thank you for what you do for us, podiatrists. Thank you for what you do for Taylor Medical, and thank you for this really helpful presentation. To those viewing, you see the contact info here. They've provided you with both an email or phone number. You can also check things out at the website. And typically when we close, we share information for next month's webinar, but it's summertime and we will not do one in July. So if you're here, you're likely getting the emails from Taylor Medical. So keep an eye out for the next one that will be scheduled on the other side of July. And with that, we'll close. We'll thank Nick and Scott again. Thank you to all those who attended, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.